All right, hi everybody. I'm Aiden Helpin. I'm here with my two colleagues, Luisa Mojica and Paula Lopez, and we want to welcome you to our presentation, Visions for the Periphery, an integrated intervention of urbanism, agriculture, and waste management within Gran Yomasa in Bogota. I just wanted to go quickly through how our presentation is going to unfold so we don't get lost along the way. We're going to start with a quick background, as well as move into the purpose of our research itself and find out what are opportunities and challenges that have presented itself through that purpose, and ultimately how we got to our design experiments, proposals, and interventions from those opportunities and challenges. And we're going to close out by just seeking out what we can do in the future and how others may be able to expand on this presentation and this work.
Okay, so Bogota, like a significant portion of Latin America, has experienced a rapid expansion in population, capital, and development of the urban space as well. This intensification of urban development has ultimately led to an ever-increasing sprawl in the city's rural periphery. With it, this sprawl has brought a new populous industry by which this urbanism could sustain itself and a drastic change in land use from agrarian to commercial. Usme, as the Bogota's southernmost locality, has experienced this phenomenon firsthand.
So here you can see how through the 50s to 2000, Bogota was one of the cities with the highest rates of urban growth in the world, a growth marked by discontinuity and fragmentation. Bogota expansion has been driven by political and market principles, which has minimized the impact of urban interventions. It is worth stressing that the expansion of urban planning of the city of Bogota has been characterized by public and private interests over the years. A theory of chaotic urbanism, where the weakening of the institutional aspect has given rise to the demolition of residential areas, the construction of buildings of doubtful housing quality, and modification in land use according to economic convenience.
Throughout this presentation, myself and my colleagues will explore how Greater Bogota's encroachment onto Usme has revealed and created environmental and economic inequalities for those that have existed there and those that have been transplanted there through the great urban expansion as portrayed by the population income graphics seen above. We will be showcasing our chosen pilot site, Gran Yomasa as a lens in combating these environmental areas of concern, as well as providing insightful encouragement to explore further opportunities through a reproducible model neighborhood.
So our intervention focused on the area of San Juan Bautista, Santa Librada, La Andrés, Betania, La Sureña, Tejares, and Marichuela, due to their demographic conditions, proximity to main transportation roads and Doña Juana landfill, and other opportunities around the Tunjuelo River. These sectors have large population densities at the residential buildings, which gives rise to social vulnerability, reinsertion, and presence of displaced population. So this work aims to define new patterns for its future configuration with a focus on urban infrastructure, agriculture, and waste management. The urban design intervention will be focused on developing land use to help communities, strategies to accommodate population growth, and revitalize the area of study.
From the waste management perspective, we thought that it is necessary to propose a transversal intervention that facilitates the articulation between community and institutions. So here it is imperative to design a local waste management program that allows empowering the community as the main agent of change, since ultimately they have been the ones facing the many challenges of the inadequate waste management at the municipal level.
And finally, our intervention in the realm of soil health and urban agriculture will look into how creating local networks of food can combat a presence of food insecurity, as well as potentially heal the area's local contaminated soils.
So through the following graphic, we seek to show a global vision of the area of Gran Yomasa, will be our area of intervention. On the west side, we can see the Doña Juana landfill and then the Tunjuelo River. In the center, we correspond to the area, like Gran Yomasa, and two big roads that connect with the city. And then when we are going to the east, you can see the mountains. So the intervention area is affected by the main issue, the river from the uncontrolled urban sprawl, ranging from the lack of quality housing to the lack of essential infrastructure for the transport of its inhabitants. Deficiency conditions exist in housing construction, as well as in public sewage, electricity service, and lack of adequate water supply and sanitation.
So we can spend hours and hours talking about the many challenges that Doña Juana landfill has, which is a very interesting topic from the engineering perspective. However, beyond the technical and engineering aspects of it, we must be aware that for the surrounding communities, the waste management strategy of the landfill, instead of being a solution, has worsened their conditions of vulnerability, making critical some of the risk scenarios in terms of sanitation and public health in a region where the lack of urban infrastructure, services, and governance predominates. Something that we have noticed is that conducting environmental education and outreach at under-resourced communities is challenging because there is no great interest from this audience. Of course, their priorities revolve around the need to work and make money in order to survive. Moreover, there hasn't been a clear strategy from the city agencies to encourage the local communities to participate of the educational programs and campaigns to problems derived from the inadequate separation and disposal of residential waste.
And despite the agrarian history and roots present in northern Usme, urban agriculture has never made its way into the locality in any prominent or formal fashion. This is largely due to the compounding issues of loss of land as a result of urbanization, as well as the degradation of available soils surrounding the neighborhood that they have experienced due to a presence of municipal industrial waste. A majority of residents living under the poverty line of the city, as well as a short-lasting governmental support, has led to about 76% of residents reporting that they are experiencing some sort of food insecurity and a lack of tools for residents to establish any sustainable, speaking in time, urban food growth programs. Despite the challenges present, we have also found that each of the three intervention areas, waste management, urban design, and urban agriculture, there are existing tools, some most definitely in need of more encouragement than others, and opportunities to build upon. Through a dichotomy of challenges and opportunities, our group was able to find of course, that the happenings of our pilot site were not occurring in a bubble and were in fact intricately intertwined with one another. Ultimately, these tools or opportunities have informed how we've molded our proposals. Now my colleague Paula will speak to our proposal in urban design.
So the strategy urban framework aims to promote an inclusive approach in land readjustment and improvement while improving the conditions in housing, looking for a settlement upgrading, redevelopment, and infill development of the Gran Yomasa area, while searching for a better condition in green spaces and transportation infrastructures. So security of property rights has an important foundation with respect to the economic, social, and environmental development of the city. Therefore, establishing land rights for the inhabitants of the settlements could favor the prosperous growth of Gran Yomasa. In addition, it is important to establish regulation for low-income families, discouraging gentrification processes and controlling market values. In this case, the political administrative formalization of the neighborhood as part of the city could be favored. The right to property ownership on the part of the inhabitants can provide security and well-being, as well as improve the feeling of security in their homes. Besides, it has been observed that the habitable conditions of the houses should be improved. With this, we refer to an improvement in the basic infrastructure and services. For example, the implementation of a system by the municipality that verifies that the dwellings comply with a minimum provision of services, such as sanitary infrastructure and water supply. Talking about settlement upgrading refers to, through planning tools, enhance the process of neighborhood legalization. This refers to the provision of basic services such as sewer system, drainage system, paving the streets, water supply, and provision of public amenities in the informal settlements. In this way, an approach could also be applied whereby residents choose plots of land that comply with the necessary basic services, favoring the concept of land ownership. This type of approach will include the provision of services which will be developed or built by the inhabitant. Through the previous study, it has been observed that in Gran Yomasa there is a high number of undeveloped plots in the constitution of the city. The proposal of an approach through which the densification of the neighborhoods is managed, for example, by promoting construction on the vacant plots to fill these urban voids, could favor the compactness of the city. So when we refer to the green spaces in the Gran Yomasa area, we can observe that there are also, like as known, informal green areas or informal green spaces. These green areas have been developed along with the settlement without prior planning. So these informal areas can be like street verges, gap spaces, green space in vacant plots, and so on. And they represent areas of opportunities where to make an impact to improve the quality of urban green space. There are important opportunities for decision makers in local authorities to consider health impacts when making decisions regarding green space. Examples of action include increased diversity of trees and planting, increased areas of green space, improve lighting and security, and provide facilities. So with this in mind, we want to show possible proposals in our urban area, intervening in the green space design in the streets and in back and fronts. Here you can see some of the examples of design that are proposed. The transportation infrastructure is a vital part for the inhabitants of Gran Yomasa, as well functioning infrastructure for economic activities and ensure the social well-being of the community, in addition to enhancing the cohesion with the city center. Right now, going from Gran Yomasa to Bogota, it takes like almost 2 hours with public transportation, one takes like 20 minutes by car. So that's just an example. The approach to improving urban transport is twofold: the search for efficient public transport and improvement to urban road design. The following solutions to the resident of the street in Gran Yomasa are based mainly on the following concepts. First, optimize safety and reduce conflict points, following pedestrian and bicycle over automobiles, bedding on public transportation, and include vegetation in the design of the roadways. So here you can see the first road prototype and its proposed design. A solution is offered in which vegetation is added on both sides of the sidewalk, configuring a safer space for pedestrians and enhancing the reduction of carbon emissions when using vegetation. On the other hand, the existence of a bicycle lane is added, promoting an alternative transport to bus and the private car. Another example of possible future design, it is proposed the centrality of public transportation. A section design in which is configured based on public transport in the center, next to it lanes for private vehicles, and this followed by vegetation. The vegetation in this case acts as a separation wall between pedestrian and vehicular traffic. Bicycle lanes are added in both directions, and the width of the sidewalks is increased. In short, traffic organization is enhanced, vegetation is integrated into the road design, and sidewalks are connected. And now Luisa will talk about waste management.
Yeah. So we consider that the implementation of a waste management program at the local level can prosper and have a good turnout as long as the community is included in the leadership of these initiatives as a means for local empowerment and community institutional articulation. Here we want to propose a starting point and lines of intervention for a local waste management program that includes education, community outreach, institutional articulation, and the identification of prospects for local systems of solid waste recovery with a composting approach. So to conduct environmental education, we should always aim to emphasize on the local problems that are intrinsically linked to public health issues and quality lives, and also how this education avenue can be an avenue for acquiring new skills and that can potentially be used in a job search scenario or even in the creation of local green employment as well. The good thing here is that there is already a foundation at local schools where the Department of Education in Bogota requires the implementation of environmental projects. Those are PRIEs in Spanish. So here we basically can start with this program. Tapping into the youth community is a good strategy to keep the history alive throughout the generations. Of course, the history of Doña Juana landfill should be known by the present and the future generations as a means to give the community tools to demand redress from the city and avoid repeating history. Local organizations are also principal factors in the education approach. They have already some track record and recognition in the field of community work. So they can provide feedback to the program and help for subsequent outreach purposes as well. In this case, the community action boards, this is something that I'm gonna talk later on, are at the top list of these organizations, along with other inclusive groups of interest, such as the local Indigenous Guard, the local Board of Environmental Education, the Board of Students, the USME Indigenous Board, and also the LGBTI Board. This program curriculum should include at least the following topics: the land acknowledgement and Doña Juana landfill history, the public health issues derived from the inadequate waste disposal, the benefits of local waste management, the best practices at source separation, and the identification of local opportunities for solid waste recovery. This education strategy will merge and be the foundation for outreach. So a strategic outreach can help increasing community participation to guarantee the success of a solid waste management program. These campaigns will inform the inhabitants of Usme about the frequency of the trash collection services and the impacts of living around the solid waste hotspots, and how to get involved with the new community and institutional initiatives that are to come. So what individuals or organizations will lead this aspect? We need a niche of people doing outreach that really represents the diversity in Usme. So indigenous people, seniors, Promoambiental, which is the waste management service provided, and even the students from the local school that are already involved with the educational approach. So for example, this first picture here shows a food distribution during the pandemic, accompanied by the local indigenous guard and the social integration secretary of Bogota. Also here we mentioned some of the resources that we need to conduct outreach. And sorry, I'm gonna go back to show you this picture. When and where the outreach should be conducted at high foot traffic areas during cultural, educational, or even religious events. For example, the bottom picture corresponds to the Heritage Festival in Ruana, hosted in Usme, and it is a yearly event that brings together people through cultural heritage. So how can we improve the institutional articulation? The political administrative organization of Bogota has already a structure that takes into account the local mayor's office as local authorities for localities. So the city has recognized the community action boards as nonprofit civic corporations made up of residents of a place who join efforts and resources to seek solutions to the most heartfelt needs of the community. However, reality does not really reflect what the paper says, and it is necessary to create an inclusive citizen participation mechanism that encourages the community to be the agent of change and take the leadership of these initiatives that are generated through this mechanism. In other words, a mechanism that allows institutions to contribute to the strengthening of the community action boards. This graphic here shows some of the city agencies that can contribute data, financial, and outreach resources, as well as create jobs for community outreach by hiring maybe local residents that are already involved with the outreach and educational approach, and of course, making sure to comply with the regulatory aspect of waste management in the city. So the temporal disposition of waste at the hotspots can attract vectors, and usually the trash content that is attracted to the pests is organic matter. So the correct source separation of this waste stream can help to make less critical the public health issue of the solid waste hotspots. Moreover, the recovery of organic waste through composting can bring benefits to the local communities in relation to urban agriculture, food security, community involvement and empowerment, soil health, environmental impacts, and food sovereignty as well. So composting and urban agriculture, which Aidan will talk about next, are related. Each community garden should have at least one small-scale composting system to be able to make compost and benefit from the physical and chemical properties while developing a sustainable urban practice on site. The same community gardens are point to repurpose other recyclable materials in the construction and growth of their operations. The neighborhoods that are part of this area of intervention have potential for the use of local spaces where small composting systems can be placed. So for example, here, the first picture is the school at Santa Librada, which has a very good place with the potential for maybe placing a small scale composting system. And the same, the bottom one is actually the community hall. That is where the community action board gets together, and they also have a potential for a small composting system over there.
So our last major area of intervention we decided to follow as a group was a bolstered effort in urban agriculture, largely because, again, our focus site, Gran Yomasa faces two critical challenges, those being that can be potentially aided by this practice. One being the prominence of food insecurity within this site and locality, and the other being a significant level of soil contamination as a result of the site's locale. As we've seen in cities throughout the globe, urban agriculture does not need to present itself in one grand landmass to still be of significance. In order to first combat staggering levels of food insecurity within our intervention site, we are proposing the inclusion of community food gardens within the 7 community centers previously mentioned by my colleague Luisa. The allocation of space, though variable depending on the community center itself, allows a relatively equitable distribution of food gardens initiatives through Gran Yomasa. The proposal finds its legs upon two existing initiatives of UA in southern Bogota, the first being a sponsorship by Bogota Botanical Garden, which provides organized gardening efforts with equipment and monetary efforts to build and tend to their gardens, as well as some starting initiatives around urban agriculture that are starting in other neighboring localities that can be templated here. The proposal also has the ability to be supported, in theory, through the city's most recent strategic plan, Un Nuevo Contrato Social y Ambiental, under the second purpose or amendment, Changing Habits to Life in Green Bogota, which does look to allocate, create 19 urban agricultural networks throughout the city, and has allocated $8 million of relatively vague money to support the efforts included in this purpose. Of course, community gardens can't be an end-all solution to ameliorate food insecurity in its entirety. A 2017 study here in New York City, sponsored through Green Thumb, does provide an important insight to the impact that they can have, especially for those involved. Firstly, the study found that 70% of community gardens within the study's range were below 0.25 acres large, and even more, 40% of that 70 were found to be under 0.12 acres large. And it's important to include that these agencies are being tracked by a city agency, or these agricultural institutions are being tracked by a city agency and run by a volunteer organization. Building from this, the study examined that gardeners who define themselves as food insecure have supplied 2/3 of their vegetable intake through their community garden participation within their growing season. Within a majority of proposed community centers containing this available acreage, we can actually find that this bare minimum of food can be provided to those that are involved. At the moment, this figure showcases how little space is needed to provide food, but still does show that there is a need to find ways of providing yield beyond those that are directly involved in community gardens. In addition to food production, we also were looking at ways in which these community gardens could look to or be used as tools for phytoremediation. There was a 2018 study from Ramirez et al. That provided us with 19 native Andean plants that could be focused and grown within these off seasons of community gardens present that we were looking at in the previous slide. This showcases how well each plant reacts with a particular metal that are present here after land mining operations that have occurred in areas of South America similar to Usme. And they also have given us opportunities and templates for providing these identified plants with potential templates as to how to actually incorporate them into phytoremediation efforts. Ideally, this is also where a co-sponsorship of a botanical garden or a greater city agency could be of great benefit, because of the relevant day-to-day orgs could be provided with tools for soil sampling, as well as instruction, and even transportation to eventual remediation sites. We just wanted to also briefly talk about the future work that can be taken on by interdisciplinary elements of this program, or even people that are looking to expand on something within any one of these elements here.
So there is still a lot of work to be done regarding urban design. Opportunities in the implementation, land right, and ownership is essential to fight against informal settlements. There is a need for the promotion of housing opportunities for all, and a gap in citizen participation in urban planning decisions.
Also, there is potential to do an in-situ collection of spatial data that allows mapping out the local opportunities for development of urban agriculture and composting activities, and also development of a tool to evaluate the impact of these school projects and its potential to growth and or replication. Also, another project should be the design and implementation of a robust educational program like the Master Composter that we have here in New York City, and also Seattle and other cities in the world, where community members can learn and acquire sustainable skills for free while building a strong community network. And last one, despite the city's efforts to for the implementation of an innovative waste containerization system, a consensus study is needed to allow the design of a new scheme or the development of a strategy that guarantees the success of a system like the one that is already implemented.
There's also a stark need to implement some sort of format for providing urban agriculture with paid management rather than volunteer. to be done through a increase or a relook at the Bogota Sin Hambre policy, which looked to offset costs for providing local food to local markets and provide urban agricultural initiatives with more funding, but has since been terminated. And also there are opportunities to do complete remediation efforts on landfill and mining efforts like those that we would see in Fresh Kills in New York City. We wanted to thank all of you so much for listening to our presentation, also for your work, and to also thank our advisor, Zihao Zhao, for all the advising that he did for us this presentation. Thanks so much.